Hi, welcome to section 2 of the Foundational Skills module. This section is really all about instructional routines. In the first section, we spent time with an overview. We talked about how the brain works. We talked about the phonological and orthographic processor. And now we're going to start on instructional routines. Let's talk a little bit about why we use routines. One of the things we know from the last little bit of work we did was that students need to be able to take a skill and practice it 5, 7 times a day, 20, 200 times, 300 times to be able to take it into long-term memory. So when we are working with the foundational skills, there is very little that's about inquiry or guessing. So we want students to have clear and concise directions so they know exactly what's going to be happening. We also want increased student engagement. In order to have students practice the skills the number of times we want them to, we need to be able to have all students engaged and as many repetitions as possible. When students are not focused on what is it he wants me to do, but rather focusing on the content of learning, that helps a tremendous amount in increasing the value of the repetitions. Also, again, we want them to have many opportunities to practice, and we model. Each time we have a new routine, we model it for 1 or 2 items so that kids can see what it looks like and sounds like to be successful in the work that is being asked of them. This is the comprehensive decoding rubric, and you also have in your handout the advanced decoding rubric, and it was developed by Boise State University with Evelyn Johnson and her colleagues. It has been researched, it has been proven to be valid and reliable, and it's so wonderful you have a tool like this to be able to help you. The whole goal of this tool is to be able to set some goals. So if you are a coach, being able to use it as a guide to set goals with the teachers that you are coaching. If you are a teacher, same, to be able to look at what are some explicit foundational skills pieces that I need to be thinking about to support my students. So the topic is on the left, or the category is on the left, and then the very first column with words in it is if you were to score a 3. Meaning, if it was amazing, absolutely amazing in the work, and what would that look like and what would that sound like? So I'm going to ask you to take a couple of minutes yourself and look through the comprehensive decoding rubric as well as the advanced decoding rubric. And I'd love you to look in that very first column to see what excellence looks like. And then think about what are some things that are confirmed for you as you read this rubric and you say, I've been working on that. I've been working on giving adequate practice. I've been working on consistently giving my directions clearly and consistently. I've been working on modeling so that students can see what it is we're going to do next. So look at that column, that very first column with a whole bunch of descriptors in it, in both of those rubrics. And then facilitators, I'm going to ask that you give time for folks to talk about it and what are some things you notice, where do you see are some strengths, and where do you see some places that are reminders, oh yeah, that's something I could work on. All right, take a few minutes and look at the rubric and then have a conversation with your colleagues, and I will see you back in just a couple of minutes. Facilitators, please pause. Terrific, welcome back. So what do I mean when I say instructional routines? What are the common routines that are typically found in a reading program? So here's a list of the routines that you would probably see. Number 1, irregular or high frequency word routine. Almost all reading programs have a routine for this, and most of them use the introduction routine of say it, spell it, say it. So irregular or high frequency, depending on how your program labels it, really is meant to help students be able to see words that are used frequently or are spelled with an irregular pattern and be able to automatically read that word without trying to decode it. For example, the word like. The word like is something that can be decoded but we see it so frequently that we want students to absolutely be able to see that word and immediately know that the word is like. The word was. The word was is an irregular word. It doesn't really follow the spelling patterns in the ways that we would want kids to sound it out. So we want to be able to teach them in terms of an irregular word to look at it and see it right away. So almost every reading program has a routine for delivering instruction with high frequency or irregular words. Phoneme blending and phoneme segmenting. We know now that there are 11 phonological awareness skills, and of the complexity, phoneme blending and phoneme segmenting are quite high. So at a minimum, we would want students to be able to have the experience of the phoneme blending and phoneme segmenting routines every day. And we definitely want the other 9 to have time in our reading instruction as well. Sound spelling cards. When we think about sound spelling cards, they look like this. And with the sound spelling cards, there are some important pieces of information on here. These are not really alphabet cards. They are really based on a sound. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things I would love you to write down. Number 1, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. That's not really new, right? 26 letters in the alphabet. There are 44 sounds in our English language. This is the big part. There are 250 graphemes or spelling patterns that represent those 44 sounds. That's what makes decoding so difficult for some students, that there are 250 representations of those 44 sounds. So that's pretty important. And we use these sound spelling cards to associate a picture, a sound, and then the spellings. So they're not really the alphabet, and they really represent, here's the picture that represents that sound. And then we say the sound, and then down below represent the most common spellings of that sound. And we want to be very explicit in our routines to teach children that pattern of the picture, the sound, and the spellings. We'll spend a couple of minutes with that in just a second. Blending routines. Almost every reading program has blending routines, and they are typically these routines. Typically, there is continuous blending, and that's where I move through the sounds in a looping fashion and blend those sounds together, and then eventually say the whole word. That's continuous blending. Sound by sound blending is taking sounds and putting them together sound by sound or pattern by pattern. Vowel first is when you spot the vowel first and identify the vowel sound. It's usually done with complex vowel patterns, and then go back and read the whole word. And multisyllabic is just as it says. So as we are working through these routines today, I want you to be thinking about your blending routines. And are they explicit enough? Are they clear enough? Do students understand what the job is with that blending routine? And then reading at the word level, that's really about the orthographic processor being able to look at a whole word and being able to read it. As we learned in this last section, that's a job that the orthographic processor has. So we want to check in and see how are students doing with reading at the whole word level, whether it's regular or irregular. Does the brain code it and then be able to read it right away? And finally, dictation. With dictation, we know that we typically segment the sounds first and then represent those patterns in writing. And so almost all programs have a dictation routine as well. We're going to go back to this triangle for a minute. I introduced it in section 1, but now we're going to talk about some specific pieces with it. So if you will find this in your handout, I'm going to give you a couple of notes to be able to take today. This triangle is built in this progression for a reason. You will notice at the top of the triangle starts with phonological awareness. Almost every foundational skills lesson starts with phonological awareness. From phonological awareness down through high frequency words should take about 15 minutes, even 12 when you get really good at the routines, should take no more than 12 to 15 minutes. The bottom piece, which is reading the decodable reader, takes about 15 minutes also. And most of the time that's done in small group because schools typically only have 6 copies of the decodable reader. And that's okay. So the first 15 minutes is really whole group and is meant to solidify those decoding skills for every student. And then the decodable reader applies them for accuracy and fluency. A lot of folks say to me, can I rearrange these activities? Can I do them in any sequence? And we really encourage you to not rearrange them because they're built on a progression. You'll notice that the high frequency words are right before the decodables, or they're the last in the lesson. Sometimes some programs have it last and some programs have it first, but very rarely do you see a program that puts the high frequency words in the middle of this triangle. And that's because you start with a phonological processor, then you move down to the sound spelling cards, and that activates both the phonological and the awareness orthographic processor together. So you see a picture and a sound and the symbol. That's that bottom part when those two are starting to talk together. Then you move into the blending routines, and that actually moves into symbols only. With symbols only, then we want to move through a progression that I'll show you in a little bit. So then you're blending those words. And then finally, in terms of this decoding work, at the end of that part, you are actually doing dictation. You're segmenting the sounds and representing them in a written format. And then finally, high frequency words. And that is not a part of decoding because it is work we want students to know automatically when they see the word. They don't really activate their decoding part of the brain. So we ask that you actually follow this progression. Your lesson plan probably follows this progression because it's built on research. So those are just a couple of things about this tree or triangle and how it's built and why it's built in the way that it is. Let's talk a little bit about the routines and the important aspects of a routine. So there's some really key attributes that I want you to tuck into your repertoire and be able to access them when you need to be. In a routine, you will usually see a teacher description or explanation. It should be brief and it should cue students as to what it is we are working on. For example, I might say, boys and girls, you're going to blend words. That might be all I say. Or boys and girls, we're going to blend now. We're going to take our sounds and blend them into words. That would be all I would need to say with this chart behind me. So a short teacher description. The next thing is that we are looking for a choral response. We want all students responding and we want them all responding at the same time so that one child is not blurting and doing all the cognitive work and then another child is just riding that wave behind. I was in a class the other day with a small group of kids and there was a little boy who needed just a little bit more processing time and there were a couple of kids blurting. And you would see this little boy and he'd be working on it for 2 seconds in his head. And right when he was ready to answer, the other kids answered. And you could see him go, oh. And he was doing the work, but because the teacher didn't keep that window small of a choral response, he actually missed out on it every single time. So we want a choral response. The next thing we think about is attention or focus. I'm going to put my finger here, and this is going to be my focus. It's going to show children where I'm going to start. If I'm doing a sound spelling card, my focus is here, so my finger is here, which says to them, right here, boys and girls, I don't have to say that, but right here, boys and girls, my finger is the focus. It creates the place for them to look for the work we're going to do. Then you want to give students a cue for what's going to happen. So I may say here, picture, and that's really clear for students. They're going to give me the name of the picture. I may say sound, and they're going to give me the sound at the beginning of volcano. Or I may say spelling, and they're going to give me the name of this spelling. Or I may say blend, and students begin the blending process. Or I may say word, and they read the whole word. So the cue is not long, but it's really focused on what it is you're going to ask of them in a moment. Wait time. We talked about the idea that from working memory, that it takes a little bit of time for students to retrieve things from working memory, and we want them to get an authentic practice. So we may need to give them a couple of seconds because it's new learning for them. So I may say word, and then in my head I wait 2 seconds. So it goes like this, word, slide. In my head, I'm saying word, slide, blend. And with blend, I actually just get right to it. But with word, I would give them 2 seconds and slide. Okay, so wait time, being sure the kids have enough opportunity. So the wait time here would be blend, word, slide. Okay, all right. So I want to be sure to give them wait time to be able to think. Then I always signal them with a cue, with a way to respond. So I may tap, I may swoop, I may slide, and that tells them what it is I'm asking. When I tap, they know I'm asking them to respond. When I swoop my finger, I'm asking them to respond. Or when I slide, I'm asking them to respond. So these are just some important attributes of an explicit instruction routine in foundational skills. So let's try one before we get too much further. So this is the sound spelling card, and we've talked about how important it is. The picture associates, this puts a picture in their mind. The sound puts the sound with that picture, actually not even any symbol yet, and then I say spelling. So it goes like this when I'm introducing. So I'm going to start it with me first. So the picture is volcano. Picture. The sound is V. Sound. The spelling is V. Spelling. So that's when I'm introducing it. I'm going back and forth so that it's not a guess. So I don't say, boys and girls, what picture is this? Volcano, mountain, clouds. I don't want that. So I say explicitly, the picture is volcano. Picture. The sound is V. Sound. The spelling is V. Spelling. So when I'm introducing, I'm very explicit. It's not a guessing time. Boys and girls, what letter is this? Then you have inaccurate answers and kids are shouting out and that little struggling reader's thinking, I don't know. So we are very clear with them. Then when we're doing a review, the picture is, the sound is, the spellings are. When you have multiple spellings for a single sound, it goes like this. The picture is chick. Picture. The sound is ch. Sound. The spelling is ch. Spelling. The spelling is vowel tch. Spelling. Great. Now if I'm reviewing, picture, sound, spelling, spelling, and I'm very clear. When you get to a card like this, this is where those 250 graphemes come in. So this is the sound of oo, and all of these spellings represent oo. So we want to be able to give students a lot of practice with the idea that there are multiple spellings for the sound of oo. So if you haven't taught them all, you just cover up the ones you haven't taught. The picture is moon. Picture. The sound is oo. Sound. The spelling is oo. Spelling. The spelling is EW. Spelling. The spelling is UE. Spelling. So I'm just explicit with them the first time. If I'm reviewing, picture, sound, spelling, spelling, spelling. So the sound spelling cards are super important for kids. Remember I told you my grandson needed 400 repetitions with these cards for consonants and short vowels. This grapheme all by itself did not mean anything to him. When we started attaching a picture and a sound and then the spelling, he was able to get it. Now as he's reading or writing, if he comes to a sound that he's trying to represent, all I have to say is tiger, and he knows T or T. If I say apple, he knows so he can put that into either his blending or his writing. So these sound spelling cards are really important as you are thinking. So now let's move in for a few minutes into blending routines, and then we'll go back and do a little bit of practice. There are 3 blending routines we're going to work with today: continuous, sound by sound, and vowel first. Continuous blending is so important for early readers in kindergarten. It's primarily a kindergarten routine. It's based on this study of first graders, and they were actually looking at what do first graders need to come in with. So when kindergartners leave kindergarten and enter into first grade, so they were looking at what is it that students need to be able to do. And it was, what they learned is this idea about unitizing. When I was teaching, I did not know that this progression existed. And I did not know that when a child would say app, car, I didn't know what was causing that. Now with this study and others that have been replicated, we understand. So let's look at the progression that's on the slide. When students begin to do their decoding work, they can do sound by sound, and they say talk. So in this study, they use nonsense words just to be sure that students didn't know those words. So in the sound by sound level, kids are saying talk. So when I hear students saying talk, I'm happy. And then I go to the next box, and it is sound by sound and then recoding. So this is where a lot of students were getting hitched up. So they would say talk, tap. So the idea, this is where the continuous blending routine comes in, because it's talk, talk, then they recode. So when I hear students saying talk, tap, now I'm cued in, the continuous blending routine. They need help moving from box 1 to box 2, and that's the continuous blending routine's job. Then you go to the next box, and the next progression is actually called unitizing. And this is where they found if students came into first grade able to work in this box, the 3rd box over, that they were on track for first grade and second grade and thereafter. They also found the converse, that if students came into first grade not able to do the work in box 3, they were behind in first grade, second grade, and third grade. So this box is really important. And I didn't know how to help students move into this box. This is called the unitizing box. And that means that they see the units within, smaller units within that word or bigger unit. So a student would either say talk or talk, but they begin to put those sounds together. So that's called unitizing. And we have a sound by sound blending routine that helps students begin to do that unitizing after blending. And then finally, when they would read in whole units, so they would just look at that unit and say talk. So this is the progression, and the blending routines are designed to move students through this progression, which I thought was amazing because I didn't know that when I was teaching. There are some very important pieces for us to know, especially when we have struggling readers. When students cannot blend those sounds together or recode them together, we can go back and create some scaffolding for students. For example, the first one is CVC, meaning all continuous sounds. So there are continuous sounds and stop sounds, and the easiest for students to blend are all continuous. For example, here, I can hold these sounds for a long time and blend through them. That's the least difficult part of the blending process. It's the easiest place for kids to start. So if you have students who have trouble blending, we start here with all continuous sounds. And it goes like this: blend, sun, word, sun. One of the mistakes I hear in classrooms sometimes is that inadvertently we teach kids That is guaranteed. I'm going to go back a box. That is guaranteeing that they will probably stay in box one a little bit too long, a little bit longer than they need to. We as teachers, when we are working on the blending routine, want to be sure that we are moving through the sounds and we don't stop in between sounds. And we say to the students, don't stop in between sounds. Here we go, we're going to hook these sounds together. Ready? Blend. Sun. Word. Nice. Here's another one. Blend. Hold those sounds together. Blend. Ran. Word. Ran. Nice job. These top two words are examples of all continuous sounds. I can hold those sounds until my breath runs out. The next one down in terms of difficulty is when there is a stop sound at the beginning. Stop sounds give students a lot of trouble. And if we're not careful, we could take them all the way back to box one accidentally. So if we say, ready, boys and girls, blend, at, that is actually creating their space back in box one. So we want to hook this stop sound, which is, you have to say it quickly or you distort the sound. If I don't say it quickly, it comes out ka. And in your handout, there's a list of stop sounds and continuous sounds. So if you're unfamiliar with those, you can take a look. So when I come to a stop sound at the beginning, I hop off of it as quickly as I can and I get to the vowel. So it goes like this: blend, cat, word, cat. So as quickly as I can, I'm hopping off of that vowel. I also have a stop sound at the end here, which is really the third bullet down. There's a stop sound in the front and a stop sound in the end, and that is really the third bullet down in terms of difficulty. So I hop off of this sound and I hop off of the sound as quickly as I can. Otherwise, students are at, and they're not actually blending them together and they go all the way back to box one. So blend, cat, word, cat. Blend, tin, word, tin, okay? And then finally, again, when you have two stop sounds at the end, you quickly get to the vowel and hop off, quickly get to the vowel and hop off. So that is the progression. And what that has helped me do when I have a student who really struggles moving from box one to box two, I may need to back up in that progression. And I need to really maybe start up here back with blending all continuous sounds so they get that idea that you move through. Then I introduce a stop sound at the beginning, and then I introduce a stop sound at the end. Most reading programs are not built this way, and so it's our job to understand this progression to be able to back up and help struggling students. So this progression here is really important for us to understand, that in box one, they would be able to say talk. That's fantastic. In order to move them to the next box, they need to be able to take those sounds and blend them together, and it's called recoding. And then we'll move to the next box after that. So this is pretty important in terms of the blending routines. So I'd like you to stop now. I've said a lot of things. I'd like you to stop now and think about a couple of things that were new or confirmed for you. In your handouts is the tree or the triangle for you to refresh yourself. We talked about the instructional routines. We've talked about the idea of a focus and a signal and a wait time and a cue, that those parts of the routine are really important. And then we just talked about sound spelling cards and how critical they are to put the sound and the symbol in a picture together, and with those 250 graphemes. And then we just went through continuous blending, talked about the study that shows the progression of how students move through that process, talked about the continuous blending routine and how we might support students who are struggling. So we just talked about a lot of things. So facilitators, will you pause the video for a little bit? And colleagues, will you talk about 2 areas that were new or confirmed for you so far in this last little bit of information in the foundational skills? So I'll see you when you come back. Facilitators, please pause the video. Terrific, welcome back. I hope you had a great discussion with your colleagues. I know that the kindergarten routine of continuous blending for me was really a little bit mind-blowing as I was learning that, because there were so many students I know I sent on not really understanding that. The other thing is that some of your reading programs will have continuous blending up in 1st grade and 2nd grade. And I just wanted to reiterate that that is something we want students to be able to do by the end of kindergarten. We want them to be able to blend those sounds together, because the next thing they get into is called unitizing. And that is what the sound by sound blending routine is meant to do. So with the sound by sound blending routine, you actually have a blank piece of paper or a blank board. There's nothing there. And I'm going to write as I go. So this is the routine. Let's take a look at it for a minute while I adjust this. This is the routine. So I'm going to write the first sound and then tap, then the second sound, tap, third sound, tap, and blend all the way through. So let me show you how this works. For those of you who have this sound by sound blending routine in your materials, a lot of times it's misunderstood because they try to draw it out in the routine, and people can misinterpret what the routine looks like. So a lot of times when we are in schools, we model this routine because what it looks like on paper and what it looks like in person is a little bit different. So let me show you how this goes. So I write my first sound, 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 ah, blend, fa. Sound, blend, fast. Sound, blend, fast. Word, fast. So if you look on the screen for a minute, you can see I wrote the first sound and I tapped and said sound. I wrote the next sound and I tapped and said sound, and then I blended those 2 sounds together. Then I did the next sound, tap, blend, next sound, tap, blend, and then finally at the word level. So let me show you what this will look like in real time with students. Ready? Ready, boys and girls? Here we go. Sound, sound, blend, sound, blend, sound, blend, word, sound, sound, blend, sound, blend, word. Get the idea? So what this begins to do is help kids put those things, those sounds into units. For example, if I say sound, sound, now I'm going to blend these 2 pieces into a unit so they are full. Sound, blend, sla. So now this becomes a unit. Sound, blend, slap, and then finally at the word level, slap. So that's what sound by sound blending looks like in a school. And it is really meant to help students move into that 3rd box, which is unitizing, beginning to see these letters coming together as units. So we're actually going to practice this for a couple of minutes. Here are the words I want you to practice, the same ones that I did: fast, slip, sat, slap. And so I'd like you to find a colleague. Your facilitator is going to pause the video for a minute in your handout towards the back. you have a practice sheet. You'll have a box that is empty and it says sound by sound blending. So I would like you to give this a try. I'm going to leave this up on the screen so that you can see it even when you pause the video. And I'd like you to work with these words. They won't be up there, right? It's going to be a blank piece of paper in that box, and I want you to work through it sound by sound. So it's sound, tap, blend, sound, tap, blend, sound, tap, blend. And I'd like you to use these words. So facilitators, let's give them 5 minutes to be able to practice with a partner. And I'd like each of you to take a turn, one of you being the teacher, one of you being the student, because this is truly a first grade and second grade routine. Kindergarten doesn't typically do this routine, but first and second grade, we really want to be sure we master this to take kids into that unitizing box. Kindergarten kids, if they can do it, we would move them right into it because it's very helpful for them when they come into first grade being able to do that unitization work. All right, facilitators, will you pause for 5 minutes and let folks practice, and we'll come back together. Great, I hope you had a great practice session. The next routine that we're going to work with in terms of blending is called the vowel first blending routine. This is really meant for first grade, at the end of first grade, and second grade and up. I have to say that this is a life-changing routine for struggling students in second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. We find that the vowel combinations are what give the struggling readers trouble in those grades. Most of the time, students can handle short vowel words. It's the more complex and long vowels that give kids a lot of trouble. So we start with this routine by identifying the vowel first, and then we go back and read the word. We don't blend this word really because we're kind of past that. We're really now looking for the vowel and then saying the whole word. So if I were to sound this word out, it could sound la-a-d. So I don't want students at this level sounding those words out. Anytime you have a complex pattern like these, you want them to find the vowel combination, say the vowel combination, and then go back and say the word. So it would be sound, oh, word, load. So I'm actually going to start with my fingers underneath the vowel combination. You will notice that if it's 2 vowels, I'm going to use 2 fingers to represent 2 vowels in that pattern. If there are 3, I'm going to represent that vowel pattern with 3 fingers. And in the vowel consonant E, I'm actually going to split my fingers or separate them, depending on how you're most comfortable. So sound, word. So I say sound, and then I tap. So kids know right away. So my cue is sound, sound, and then I tap. So then students know that's when they are to respond. And then I come back and I say word, and then I slide my finger. So that's how the routine usually goes in most programs. If your vowel first routine is not quite this explicit, I highly recommend tightening it up. Because when you have struggling readers that are working with complex vowels, that work is hard enough without them not being sure as to what you want them to do. So let me do it in real time with you. Sound, word, sound, word, sound, word, sound, word, sound, word, sound, word. Okay. Super critical routine for struggling readers, especially when they get to the complexities of these vowel combinations. We don't want students to begin to sound out the words here, and that's what they have been used to doing with their continuous blending, and then when we did sound by sound blending. And when students see a word like this, really good readers say, oh, that's E, seat. Oh, that's I, light. Oh, that's O, load. Really good readers do that automatically. They spot those spelling patterns, which is why these are so important. And when you're not sure if it's If it's E or if it's like in bread, it is okay to say, boys and girls, we are going to use the Eagle card today. So anytime you see the spelling of EA in any of these, you're going to know that it is E. Absolutely okay to cue them with that really quickly. So struggling readers start at the beginning of a word and work their way across, which is highly inaccurate. We don't want them practicing that. So we find the combination, sound, word, seeds. Okay, you have a practice chart as well for vowel first blending. I would love you to try it with your colleagues. This is a game changer for struggling readers. So will you find that it should be right after sound by sound blending, working in a partnership. And if you're in a breakout room, work with your partners there. One of you hold up the words and be the teacher, and the other one be the student. So facilitators, please give your folks some time to practice vowel first blending. I'll see you back in a bit. Hi there, welcome back. You have now completed the second portion. This is our last conversation in section number 2 of this module. We have talked a lot about instructional routines. We've talked about the focus and the cue and the signal and the wait time and the teacher explanation. We have talked about being explicit so that students get the idea of practice, not a whole lot of teacher words. We have gone through what are the typical foundational skills routines in your lesson. We put those onto the tree or the triangle. I modeled some for you. We talked about the 26 letters, 44 sounds, and 250 graphemes, and how we help students really learn those and apply them. So I'd like you to think now about this section. What are some important considerations from this part of the module that really have provided some insights for you or some learning? So facilitators, this is the last processing activity of section 2. So please give folks some time to think about what are the important parts of section 2 that were really critical for you, and then talk about those with your colleagues. So facilitators, please pause the video. Thank you so much for your work in this section, and I will see you back in section 3.